Hey everybody, and welcome to week number 5. Yep, we're halfway through, and now on the descent towards the finish line. So you're going to do well. You're going to finish strong because you made it this far. Um, One of the things that I do is post out a kind of an approximation of what your grade is through the middle part of the class, just so you kind of get a feel for where you're at. You should see that as a new column in the grades section of D2L. So it gives you a pretty good idea of where you are based on the assignments graded through last week, and you'll have a pretty good idea where you're at, and kind of think about strategies on how you're going to finish strong and do well on the rest of the class. If you would like to discuss any of those, please send me an email in D2L and give me 3 times where you can meet on a video chat, and we can discuss what actually went into those grades. Maybe discuss strategies on how you could potentially do better, and then talk about what's coming up so that you get a good feel for where you can really make your best moves to move forward. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to cover this week in chapters 11 and 12. We're continuing our discussion about capital budgeting, and we're getting into some real core concepts here at this point of finance. So let's talk about chapter 11 real quick. In chapter 11, we're going to cover a really important concept called the cost of capital. And what you want to be able to recall is that the cost of capital represents the weighted average cost of the sources of financing to the firm. So it's just right at the heart of what longer-term financial decision-making is about. Understand that the cost of capital is normally the discount rate to use in analyzing an investment. So it's a really important calculation that helps the firm make sure that the decisions that they're making on how they deploy their financial resources are giving them the return that they want. Recognize that the cost of capital is based on the valuation techniques we talked about in the previous chapters, and it's applied to bonds, preferred stock, and common stock, real common types of ways to finance the enterprise. Explain how a firm attempts to find a minimum cost of capital through varying the mix of all of its sources of financing. And then you want to be able to understand that the cost of capital may eventually increase as larger amounts of financing are utilized. So this is a really important chapter. There's a lot of things going on here. That's why we take a little extra time on it, but you get a pretty good idea of what goes into the heart of longer-term financial decision-making, which is really what we cover in chapter 12. Now we're starting to talk about the actual decision-making process and what goes into it, and the different tools, how we're going to use the things that we learned about over the last few chapters in a decision-making process. So you want to be able to, in chapter 12, it's called the capital budgeting decision. You want to be able to show the capital budgeting decision and how it represents a long-term investment decision. That's really what it's for. It recognizes that cash flow rather than earnings are used in the capital budgeting process decision. We're going to talk about something called the payback method, but considers the importance of liquidity, which is of course important, but fails to consider the time value of money. So it's not used as the primary tool, I would say. The next objective is recall that the net present value and internal rate of return are generally the preferred methods of capital budgeting analysis. And just from my own personal experience, I can say that that's absolutely true. So you're going to use some derivative of what you're going to learn about in this chapter, and recognize that the discount or cutoff rate is normally the cost of capital, which we just discussed in chapter 11. So, these are big ones. These are big chapters here, and really important ones. So, whether you're going to a career in financing or not, you're probably the higher up the food chain you go in terms of decision making, the more likely that it is you're going to be utilizing all these different types of things to make decisions. Okay, so that's it. Good luck, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll catch up with you next week.